It was a Tuesday, just like any other. I had just grabbed my usual black coffee and settled in at my desk when my manager John called me into his office. His tone was neutral, but there was an edge of tension in his voice I'd never noticed before. I sat down, completely oblivious to what was coming, only to be informed, without any real explanation, that I was being let go, effective immediately. Restructuring, he said. Budget cuts. None of it made sense. I had just landed a major client the week before. I asked for an explanation. I didn't get one. I walked out with a cardboard box in my hands and a void where my confidence used to be. The subway ride home was a blur. My mind was churning with questions. Had I made some mistake without realizing it? Was it personal? Or worse, had someone set me up? I mentally replayed conversations, meetings, deadlines. Nothing stood out. I decided to give it a week. Maybe someone from the office would get in touch. Maybe something would slip out. But the silence grew more deafening with each passing day. No texts, no emails, not even a goodbye from the people I considered friends. It was then that I realized something was very wrong, and I wasn't going to let it go. That night, alone in my East Village apartment, I stared out the window at the lights of New York City. The city never sleeps, even when your world is falling apart. I opened a bottle of bourbon my dad had given me, the one I was saving for a special occasion. Well, this was an occasion, just not the special kind I had imagined. The phone rang. It was my friend Chris asking if I wanted to catch the Yankees game on the weekend. I didn't tell him about the layoff. I wasn't ready for the questions, for the pity in his eyes. "I'm dealing with some stuff," I answered vaguely. Chris didn't push. That was the kind of friendship we had. We respected each other's space. The UI. Next day, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I made a bagel with cream cheese, brewed a pot of coffee, and opened my laptop. I started updating my resume, listing contacts I could reach out to. I wouldn't let myself sink. I had worked too hard to get where I was, building a career in digital marketing ever since I graduated from college in Ithaca. The problem was, the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Nexus Digital was growing. We had just won a major account, the HealthGuard pharmacy chain. I was leading the project. The metrics were great. The client was happy. Why fire me now? Messages started trickling in from coworkers. They were superficial. "Hey man, heard the news, that's rough. Let me know if you need anything." But no one offered details. No one suggested grabbing a coffee to talk. It was as if they'd been instructed to keep their distance. One message, however, caught my eye. It was from Megan, the receptionist. "Alex, I can't say much. I just think you should look at the new hires. Something strange is going on." She was always too observant for her own good. On the third day, the reality of it began to sink in. It wasn't just a lost job. It was the feeling of being betrayed. 6 years of dedication, all-nighters finishing projects, sacrificed weekends. I was the one who suggested expanding into the online education market, an idea that landed the agency, its biggest client to date, and now discarded like a useless object. My parents called from Albany. My mom could tell from my voice that something was wrong. "Honey, what happened?" I tried to play it down, but it was no use. I ended up telling them. My dad, with his practical upstate wisdom, just said, "Alex, sometimes life pushes you where you need to go, not where you want to go." That hit me in a strange way. What if this was a blessing in disguise? But there was something else. A nagging feeling that wouldn't leave me, like I was being watched, like someone was laughing at me from behind the scenes. It wasn't just post-layoff paranoia, it was intuition. On Friday, I worked up the courage to call John, my ex-manager. It went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Nothing. I tried HR. The response was boilerplate. "All communications regarding your termination will be handled in writing." I spent the weekend trying to distract myself. I went to Central Park, ran around the reservoir, tried to read a book. Nothing worked. My mind kept circling back to the same point. There was something I wasn't seeing. On Monday, exactly 1 week after being fired, I decided to follow Megan's advice. It was time to do some digging. After all, knowledge is power, and I desperately needed to reclaim some power in this whole situation. What I didn't know was that this simple search would open a door to a world of betrayal I could never have imagined, and that the person behind it all was someone I had once loved deeply. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I logged into LinkedIn, navigated to the company page, and checked the recent hires. That's when my heart stopped. There on the list of new employees was her name, Rachel Adams, my ex-girlfriend. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Our breakup hadn't been messy, but it left wounds that still hadn't fully healed. And now she had my job. Clicked on her profile. Same title, same responsibilities, even the same department. This couldn't be a coincidence. Rachel was smart, no doubt about it. But why would the company fire me just to hire her? She wasn't even in this field before. Something didn't add up. The strangest part was her profile. Picture. It was a professional headshot, perfectly lit with her usual confident smile. But in the background, blurred behind her shoulder, I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. A very specific object. A silver pen with a red stone on the clip. That pen was mine. I had it custom made during my 2nd year at the company. And there it was, on her desk. I stared at the screen, paralyzed as a wave of memories washed over me. Rachel and I had met at a digital marketing workshop in the Berkshires 4 years ago. She worked in e-commerce for a clothing brand, but always said she wanted something more challenging. We started talking during a coffee break and exchanged numbers. 3 days later, we were having dinner in the West Village. A month after that, she was practically living at my apartment. Our relationship was intense from the start. Rachel was fascinating, intelligent, ambitious, with a laugh that could light up a room. She came from a traditional family in Boston, but had moved to New York on her own, determined to make a name for herself. I admired that about her. I admired her courage, her drive. For 1.5 years, we were inseparable. We took trips to Zion National Park, spent New Year's in Key West, and made plans to move in together. Then things started to change. Small disagreements turned into big fights. Work started consuming more of my time, and I could feel her resentment growing. There was also a certain distance, as if she was always thinking about something else when we were together. The end came, abruptly. One night, after an argument over a dinner I had to cancel for an urgent project, she simply said, "This isn't working for me." A week later, she had moved all her things out of my apartment. I tried calling, sending texts, but she was clear. She needed space, time for herself. Eventually, I stopped trying. The pain faded, and life went on. And now, almost 2 years later, she had resurfaced, in my place. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a beer. I needed to think. Coincidences happen, sure, but this felt too calculated. Rachel had no experience in marketing agencies, at least not when we were together. How did she not only get a job at Nexus but take over my exact position? I went back to LinkedIn and started analyzing her profile more closely. In the last 2 years, she had made an impressive career transition. She went from e-commerce to a small marketing agency, then a mid-sized one, and now to Nexus, one of the most respected in the industry. Her profile was filled with recent recommendations, all praising her innovative vision and strategic approach. The same qualities my clients use to praise in me. I scrolled down to her certifications, all obtained in the last 18 months. Google Analytics, content strategy, performance marketing. Quite a transformation for someone who used to say she didn't understand metrics when we were together. But the pen, that was the piece that didn't fit. It was a unique item, commissioned from an artisan in Brooklyn. Solid silver, with an embedded garnet, the stone for my birth sign, Aries. It was a gift I bought for myself when I turned 30. I kept it in my desk drawer, the one I never shared with anyone. Rachel had never even visited my office. So how did she get it? I took a screenshot of the photo and zoomed in. There was no doubt. It was my pen. The detail of the red stone was unmistakable. I felt a knot in my stomach, a mixture of anger and bewilderment. This went beyond a simple coincidence or a career opportunity. This felt deliberate, calculated. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, trying to connect the dots. I remembered that in the last few weeks before our breakup, Rachel started asking about my work more frequently. At the time, I took it as genuine interest, as support. Now those conversations took on a new, sinister meaning. The next day I made a decision. I sent a message to Paul, the senior designer at Nexus, and one of the few colleagues I had a real friendship with outside of work. I need to see you. It's serious. Are you free tonight? Paul replied almost immediately. Of course, but it can't be anywhere near the office. Meet me at the Ale House at 7. The Ale House was on the other side of town, far from the prying eyes of Nexus. It was a simple, authentic place with worn wooden tables and the best buffalo wings in the city. It was our refuge when we needed to vent about work stress. I got there early and ordered an old-fashioned. I needed some liquid courage for the conversation ahead. Paul arrived on time, his dark circles more pronounced than usual, and a worried expression that didn't match his typical good humor. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" he asked, sitting across from me. "I've been better," I replied honestly. "Paul, I need you to be honest with me. What's really going on at the agency? Why was I really fired?" Paul looked away, clearly uncomfortable. He picked up the menu, feigning interest, but I could see he was just buying time. "Look, Alex, the official story is restructuring, but there are a lot of rumors and..." He hesitated. "There's the new hire. Rachel Adams," I finished for him. Paul looked at me, surprised. "How do you know?" "LinkedIn. And she's not just a new hire. She's my ex-girlfriend." Paul's expression shifted from surprise to shock. "Wait, what? You know the woman who took your job? That's..." He lowered his voice. "That's too bizarre." "What are they saying about her at the agency?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Paul took a long sip of the beer that had just arrived. "That she came in with revolutionary ideas. That she brought a fresh approach to that pharmacy account you were handling. John is completely dazzled by her." He paused. "Alex, there's more. She's been bragging about having direct contacts at HealthGuard. Said she could expand the contract." I felt my face flush. The HealthGuard account was my win. It took months of meetings, presentations, and dinners with their marketing director. How could she possibly have contacts there? "Paul, I need to show you something." I took out my phone and showed him the LinkedIn photo, pointing to the pen. "See this? It's my custom pen, the one I kept in my desk drawer at the office." Paul studied the image, frowning. "How did she... Wait, you think this is some kind of sabotage?" I nodded slowly. "I'm starting to think I was the victim of a very well-planned takedown, and I need to find out how and why." I stared at that pen for what felt like an eternity. It was unmistakable. I remembered the day I had it engraved. It had my initials, AM, right below the red stone. Alex Miller. A common name for a man who at that moment felt extraordinarily betrayed. I had left it in my office drawer, one that I never shared with anyone. Rachel had never even visited my workplace. So, how did she get it? I started replaying our last few months together. Had I mentioned something about work she could have used? I remembered some late-night conversations, especially when things were tense between us. I vented about my boss, about the company's expansion. I told her things I probably shouldn't have. But nothing that would justify this. Then, like a lightning strike, the memory hit me. The week before she vanished from my life, Rachel had asked me to forward my project presentations for inspiration. She said she was considering a career change. I didn't think much of it at the time. I trusted her. That folder had everything: data models, campaign strategies, even client contacts. She hadn't changed careers. She had simply taken mine. The realization made me dizzy. I went to my apartment window trying to breathe. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, indifferent to my crumbling world. Horns blaring on Madison Avenue, people rushing home after a day's work, life going on as normal for everyone but me. I went back to my computer and opened my email. I searched for Rachel in presentations in the search bar. There it was, dated 2 years ago. Study materials. I opened the email and there were the attachments. Campaign Q3 PPTX, HealthGuard Digital Strategy.pdf, Market Analysis, 2023 XLSX. Oh, my God, I whispered to the empty apartment. It was all starting to make sense. It wasn't just professional identity theft. It was a meticulously planned ambush. I picked up my phone and called Megan, the Nexus receptionist who had warned me about the new hires. "Alex, I can't talk right now, I'm at the office," she whispered when she answered. "Megan, sorry to bother you, but this is important. Rachel, the new account manager, when did she start?" There was a tense pause. "Officially, 3 days after you left, but..." She hesitated. She was already around before that. In meetings with John. I saw her at least twice last month. My heart hammered in my chest. "Thanks, Megan. Just one more thing. Does she use a silver pen with a red stone?" "Yeah, always has it with her in meetings. How do you know?" "Long story. I owe you one," I replied, and hung up. I sank into my chair, trying to process it all. Rachel had been planning my downfall for at least a month, maybe longer. While I was closing accounts and working late, she was in the background, weaving her web. The question was why? What had I done to deserve this? I went back to the beginning of our relationship, trying to spot signs I had missed. Rachel was always ambitious, that was clear. But there's a difference between ambition and calculated sabotage. I remembered a specific conversation. 6 months before, we broke up. We were on my couch, watching a documentary about corporate crime. She commented casually, "Sometimes the line between ethics and success is very thin, don't you think?" At the time, I took it as a philosophical observation. Now it felt like a confession. I opened a bottle of red wine, an Argentinian Malbec I'd been saving. It wasn't exactly a celebration, but I needed something to steady my nerves. As the dark liquid filled my glass, I decided I wouldn't let this go. It wasn't just about the lost job, but what it represented. Betrayed trust. Violated integrity. I grabbed my laptop and started making a list of everything Rachel could have accessed through me. Besides the presentations, there was client data, unimplemented marketing strategies, competitor analyses, a goldmine of proprietary information. I glanced at the bookshelf where I kept a few sentimental items. Among them, a picture frame with a photo of us in Key West. We were smiling, tan, seemingly happy. I got up and turned the photo face down. That Rachel, or the one I thought I knew, no longer existed. That night I dreamed about the pen. Insiu. The dream, it grew to the size of a sword, and Rachel used it to slice my work desk in half. I woke up in a cold sweat, certain that I needed to act. The next morning I called Chris, my lawyer friend. We had met in college, and though we pursued different careers, we kept in regular contact. "I need some legal advice, Chris, it's complicated." "Complicated is my middle name, Alex, what's up?" I explained the situation, the sudden firing, Rachel's hiring, the confidential materials I had shared with her. Chris listened intently, without interrupting. "Look, there are some serious issues here," he finally said. "Intellectual property theft, possible unfair competition. But to move forward legally, we need concrete proof that she used these materials for her own benefit or the company's." "And how do I get that?" "That's the problem. If you no longer have access to Nexus's internal systems, it's hard to prove that the current strategies are derived from your work." I was silent, pondering. Then I remembered something. What if I have backups of the original presentations with intact dates and metadata? That would be a start. But we'd still need to show that she's using that material now. After hanging up, I went straight to my external hard drive. There it was. Every project, every presentation, every spreadsheet from the last 5 years. I was almost obsessive about backups, a paranoia that now felt justified. I began to methodically review the files, comparing dates, noting specific details that could be identified if they were reused. It was tedious, but necessary work. As I did, another memory surfaced. Once, Rachel had commented on a colleague who had been promoted quickly. She knew how to play her cards right, she'd said, with a gleam of admiration in her eyes. She identified who could help her climb and made strategic alliances. At the time, I interpreted it as an observation about networking. Now it sounded like a personal manual for getting ahead at any cost. I continued my investigation for hours, losing track of time. When I finally looked at the clock, it was past 10 p.m. My eyes were burning, but I had made progress. I found patterns, specific phrases, methodological approaches that were clearly mine, the trademarks of my work. But I needed more. I needed to know exactly what was happening inside Nexus now. How Rachel was using my material, how she was presenting herself to clients. Then I remembered Rodrigo, a junior developer on the IT team. We had a good relationship. I always treated him with respect, unlike some managers who saw him as just tech support. Maybe he could help me. I sent him a casual message. "Hey Rodrigo, how are things? Been a while." The reply came quickly. "Alex, man, we miss you. Things are okay here, but it's not the same. The new manager is different." I saw an opening. Different how? I don't know how to explain it. She came in with everything ready to go, you know? Like she already knew all the projects by heart. John is impressed, but something's off. Some of the ideas she presents sound way too familiar. My heart raced. "Rodrigo, I know this is a huge ask, but could you send me Rachel's most recent presentations? Just so I can get a sense of what's going on." There was a long pause. I feared I had gone too far. Finally, he replied, "Look, normally I'd say no. Company policy and all that. But after what happened to you, it wasn't right. I'll email them to you tomorrow." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Thanks, man. I owe you big time." That night I slept better than I had in days. The feeling of helplessness was starting to give way to something more productive. Determination. Rachel had made her move. Now it was my turn. The next morning I woke up to the sound of my phone. It was a message from Rodrigo. Sent. "Take a look at what I found in the Q3 strategy folder too. I think you'll find it interesting." I opened my email with trembling hands. There they were. 5 recent presentations, all with Rachel Adams' name on them. And an additional document called HealthGuard Expansion Plan PDF. I opened the last one first. By the 3rd page, I nearly fell out of my chair. It was an exact copy of my strategy for expanding the HealthGuard account, the one I had shared with Rachel 2 years ago but had never formally presented to Nexus. Every chart, every market analysis, every recommendation, all identical, just with her name in the footer. "Got you," I muttered, with a mix of satisfaction and rage. This wasn't just unethical. It was blatant plagiarism, and I had just gotten the proof I needed. Driven by a mix of betrayal and adrenaline, I decided to contact her. I sent a casual text. "Congrats on the new gig. Small world, huh?" She took 2 days to respond. "Thanks. Hope you're doing well too." Cold. Distant. I asked if she wanted to grab a coffee, just to catch up. She agreed. We met at the Daily Grind, a charming spot in Williamsburg known for its fresh croissants and organic coffee from small batch roasters. I arrived 15 minutes early, strategically choosing a table in the back. I wanted privacy, for what was about to happen. Rachel arrived on time as always. She looked impeccable, a tailored black blazer, slacks, mid-heel pumps. Her brown hair, once long, was now shoulder-length in a more executive cut. She looked like a corporate version of the woman I once knew. I, on the other hand, hadn't made much of an effort. Jeans, a t-shirt, a few days of stubble. The roles had been reversed. "Alex," she smiled, approaching the table. She started to lean in for a hug, but I subtly pulled back. She noticed and extended a hand for a formal handshake. "Thanks for suggesting this place. It's charming." "I used to come here for inspiration," I replied, watching her reaction. No sign of discomfort. She was good. We placed our orders, a cappuccino for her, a double espresso for me. The first few minutes were filled with superficial chatter. How my family in Albany was doing, if I was still running in Central Park, if I'd seen the latest show at Madison Square Garden. It was like we were acting in a poorly written play, civilized exes, no hard feelings, no secrets. After the second coffee, I decided to get straight to the point. "So you're at Nexus now. How'd you land the job?" She shifted in her seat, her posture visibly stiffening. "A great opportunity came up," she said. "I was looking for new challenges, and they needed someone with my profile." "Interesting. And what profile would that be? As far as I remember, you didn't have any experience with marketing agencies." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "People change, Alex. Over the last 2 years, I specialized in the field. I took courses, built a network, worked at a few smaller agencies." "An impressive rise," I commented, trying to keep my tone neutral. "From beginner to senior account manager in 2 years, and at Nexus no less." She shrugged as if it were no big deal. "Hard work, dedication, you know how it is." "I do," I agreed, leaning forward. "I know exactly what it's like to work hard. For years to build a career only to watch someone else reap the rewards." Her gaze hardened. "If you have something to say, Alex, just say it." I took out my phone, opened the saved LinkedIn photo, and turned the screen toward her. "I noticed something curious in your professional headshot. That pen on your desk. Silver, with a red stone. Look familiar?" Her eyes flickered, but she maintained her composure. "It's just a pen." "A pen with my initials engraved on it, Rachel. A pen that never left my office drawer. A drawer only I had access to." I paused. "A pen you could never have unless you went into my office after I was fired." She took a sip of water, buying time. "Maybe I found it after you moved out of our apartment." "Liar," I countered calmly. "I never took that pen home. It stayed at the office precisely because it was too valuable to carry around." Silence hung between us. Around us, the cafe buzzed with its normal rhythm. Students on laptops, professionals in casual meetings, tourists consulting city maps. Our little drama went unnoticed. "What do you want, Alex?" she finally asked, her voice low and controlled. "The truth. Why did you do this? Why did you orchestrate my removal?" She adjusted her hair with a practiced move. "You're being paranoid. Nobody orchestrated anything. The company restructured, you were laid off, I was hired, coincidences happen. And the files? The presentations, you asked for inspiration? The HealthGuard strategy that now has your name on it, but every word was written by me?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know you planned this, Rachel. What I don't understand is why. What did I do to deserve such a profound betrayal?" She grabbed her purse, clearly ready to end the conversation. "This is ridiculous. You lost your job and you're looking for someone to blame. I'm sorry about your situation, Alex, but I have nothing to do with it." As she made a move to stand up, I placed an envelope on the table. "Before you go, you might want to take a look at this." "What is it?" "Copies of my original presentations, and copies of your current presentations at Nexus. It's amazing how identical they are, isn't it? Even the typos I intentionally left in some of the slides are still there." She slowly sat back down, her face now visibly pale. "You can't prove anything. I'm not trying to prove anything, I just want to understand. We had something real, Rachel. At least I thought we did. Her gaze drifted to the window, to the bustling street outside. For a second I thought I saw a flicker of vulnerability, a glimpse of the woman I knew, the woman I loved. But it passed so quickly it could have been a trick of the light. You would never understand, she finally said. Not everything is about you, Alex. Then explain it to me, because from my perspective it seems very much about me, about my work, about the career you deliberately sabotaged. She took a deep breath, drumming her fingers on the table. You had everything. Talent, recognition, a clear path forward. Do you know what it's like for a woman in this market? Twice the work for half the credit. I was stuck while you just kept climbing. So this was, revenge? Envy? Call it what you want, she shrugged. I saw an opportunity and I took it. In this world, you either use the tools you have, or you get left behind. And I was just a tool to you. Our entire relationship was a means to an end. She hesitated. Not at first. It was real. But when I realized I wasn't going anywhere in my career, her voice trailed off. I did what I had to do. I felt a lump in my throat. It was worse than I had imagined. Not only had my work been stolen, my feelings had been manipulated, calculated. You could have asked for my help, I said quietly. I would have helped you build your career. We could have found a way together. She laughed, a humorless sound. Really, Alex? You barely had time for our dinners, let alone to mentor me professionally. That doesn't justify what you did. I'm not looking for justification. What's done is done. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. If you plan on suing me or reporting me to the company, go ahead. It'll be your word against mine. And guess who has the full support of the board right now? She stood up, tossed a few bills on the table for her coffee. I'm sorry it ended like this. I really am. I watched her walk out of the cafe, her posture erect, her steps firm. A confident professional on her way to another productive day at the job she had stolen from me. I sat there, a bitter taste in my mouth that wasn't from the coffee. I knew she was right about one thing. It would be hard to prove any formal accusation. The word of a bitter ex-employee against a rising new star? I didn't need to be a lawyer to know how that would end. But something in our conversation had sparked a certainty in me. Rachel wasn't acting alone. The way she spoke about the board, the confidence in her position. There were more people involved, and I needed to find out who. I ordered another coffee and opened my laptop. It was time to dig deeper. If Rachel thought she had won, she was mistaken. This was just the beginning. A week after our meeting, I received an anonymous email. No subject, no signature, just one sentence. She made a deal with your boss. Attached was a PDF, screenshots of messages, between Rachel and John, my ex-manager. My stomach turned as I read. She had offered to replace me for a lower salary, presented a refined version of my project, and even hinted she could bring in a client I had been cultivating for months. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Premeditated and executed with precision. The pen wasn't an accident, it was a trophy. A silent victory. Rachel had played a long game, taking advantage of trust and timing, and I had fallen for it completely. I felt rage, but beneath it, something colder. Clarity. They had underestimated me, and I still had access to systems they hadn't revoked. Rereading. The messages, I realized the conspiracy went beyond Rachel and John. There were mentions of a meeting with AC, whom I knew to be Anthony Carter, the CFO of Nexus. In one message, John wrote, AC approved the plan. He thinks the numbers make sense. Lower cost, same revenue. They eliminated me. For profit. Pure and simple. I earned a good salary, the result of years of hard work and proven results. Rachel offered to do the same for less, along with the promise of expanding the HealthGuard account, using my own contacts and strategies. What Infuriated me wasn't just the scheme itself, but the cold, calculated manner in which it was executed, as if I were just a variable on a cost spreadsheet, disposable and replaceable. I checked the sender of the anonymous email. Truth, revealed iProtonMail.com. Clearly created just for this. I replied with a simple, "Thank you, who are you?" I didn't really expect an answer. To my surprise, an hour later my phone vibrated. A new message from the same sender. Someone who was also wronged. I have more. Want to meet? I arranged to meet at Bryant Park, a small oasis of green in the middle of Midtown. I chose a public place as a precaution. After all, I didn't know who my mysterious informant was or their true intentions. I arrived early and sat on a bench near the main entrance. The park was relatively empty for a Tuesday morning. A few executives cut through. Tourists took photos of the towering trees and homeless people rested on the more secluded benches. At 10:30 a.m., sharp, a woman approached. I recognized her immediately. Denise Olson, a former administrative assistant from Nexus. I had worked with her for years, but we never had much contact beyond professional pleasantries. "Alex," she greeted, sitting down beside me. She wore sunglasses and a scarf over her hair as if trying not to be recognized. "Denise, you're the one from the email?" She nodded, looking around nervously before taking off her glasses. "Sorry for the mystery. I couldn't risk using my personal email." "What's going on? Why are you helping me?" She opened her bag and took out an envelope. "Because what they did to you, they're doing to me, or rather they've already done. I was fired yesterday." "I'm so sorry," I said sincerely. "Also, restructuring?" "Exactly." She laughed humorlessly. "The difference is, as an administrative assistant, I had access to a lot of things. Emails, calendars, documents, and including John's and Anthony's." She handed me the envelope. Inside were more screenshots, emails, messages, even photos of internal documents. "This is unbelievable," I muttered as I skimmed the material. "They're cleaning house, Alex, replacing older, higher-paid employees with new talent who will accept lower salaries. It's a project called HR Optimization, completely confidential." "And Rachel?" "She's just a pawn. A smart, ambitious pawn, but a pawn nonetheless. John found her at a digital marketing conference about 4 months ago. She mentioned she knew you and had some insights into your work methods. One thing led to another." 4 months? The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. So even when we were out of touch, she was already planning to take my place? Denise nodded. "The initial plan was to bring her in as your assistant, to learn from you. But then they realized it would be easier to just remove you. Especially when she showed them she already had access to some of your work." I flipped through the documents, each page revealing more of the conspiracy. There was even a cost-benefit analysis comparing my salary to the package offered to Rachel. "Why are you showing me this, Denise? This is risky for you." She looked at the ground, thoughtful. "I worked at Nexus for 8 years. I bled for that company. Canceled vacations, worked holidays, all because I believed in the project, and I was thrown out like trash." Her voice trembled. "I might not be able to get my job back, but I'm not leaving quietly." There was a determination in her eyes that I recognized, the same one that was starting to grow inside me. "There's one more thing," she continued, opening her bag again. "I found this on Rachel's desk when I was cleaning out my things." She handed me a small silver object. My pen. The red stone gleamed in the morning sun. "Thank you," I murmured, holding the familiar object. It felt like getting a piece of myself back. "She's meticulous, Alex. She has a file with information on all the clients you managed. Names, personal tastes, even their kids' birthdays. Things you mentioned casually to her throughout your relationship, all logged and categorized." "I can't believe I was so blind," I said, running a hand over my tired face. "Don't blame yourself. She's good at what she does, and she had inside support." We sat in silence for a few moments, watching the people pass by, each lost in their own world, oblivious to the little drama unfolding on our park bench. "What are you going to do now?" I finally asked Denise. I have an interview next week, a smaller agency, but with values more aligned with mine. She smiled faintly. What about you? I looked at the documents in my hands. I think it's time to bring this story to light. Be careful, she warned. Nexus has good lawyers, and John has connections all over the industry. I understand the risks, but some things are more important than security. We said goodbye with a promise to stay in touch. As I walked back home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. I had been betrayed, manipulated, discarded, but now I had ammunition to fight back. At home, I spread all the documents out on my living room table. I began to organize them methodically, creating a timeline of events, connecting people, identifying patterns. The story that emerged was heartbreaking. It wasn't just about me or Denise. It was about a corporate culture that valued numbers over people, that rewarded betrayal and punished loyalty. While I was working, I got a message from Paul, the designer. Man, something weird is going on. Rachel is requesting access to all the agency's historical archives, including stuff from before she even started. She said it's for a special project for Anthony. I replied quickly, "Did you give her access?" "Not yet. I told her I needed formal authorization from IT. She was not happy about it." "Good call. Keep an eye on it." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It wasn't just my job Rachel wanted. It was Nexus's entire institutional knowledge, probably to repackage and sell as her own in her next career move. That night, I worked late, compiling all the evidence into a single document. I added my own analysis, contextual explanations and correlations. When I finished, it was past 3 in the morning. I looked at the final file. Nexus, scheme, complete.pdf. 62 pages of detailed evidence. As I saved the file, my computer made a strange noise. The screen flickered. For a moment, I thought it was just exhaustion, but then I realized someone was trying to remotely access my machine. I quickly unplugged the network cable and turned off the Wi-Fi. What was happening? Was it possible Nexus knew what I was doing? Had they monitored my communications with Denise? A chill ran down my spine. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I couldn't take any chances. I copied the file to a thumb drive and shut down the computer. Nexus had resources, they had skilled IT technicians. If they suspected what I was doing, they might try to stop me. I slept poorly, waking at every noise, imagining footsteps in the hallway, shadows in the dark. In the morning, before even making coffee, I made 3 copies of the file. One on the thumb drive, another on an external hard drive, and a third I sent to a newly created email account, accessible only from another device. I wasn't an expert in IT or digital security, but I knew enough to protect important information. The game was getting dangerous, and I needed to be prepared. As I was having my coffee, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Alex Miller?" A deep male voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Ricardo Pontes. I'm with the legal department at Nexus Digital." My blood ran cold. How did they know? What did they want? "How can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss some pending matters related to your termination. Would it be possible for you to come to our office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Was it a trap? An intimidation tactic? Or just a coincidence?" "Unfortunately, I can't make it tomorrow," I replied. "My schedule is full." "I see. In that case, perhaps it's best we resolve everything in writing. You will receive an email later today." I hung up, my heart pounding. Nexus was making a move. I needed to be faster. I grabbed my phone and called Chris, my lawyer friend. "I need your help, now." I gathered all the evidence, emails, logs, shared drives. I compiled a dossier and sent it directly to the company's compliance department and legal team. Within days, I received a response. It was formal, but it said enough. An internal investigation had begun. Chris, my lawyer and friend, carefully reviewed every document Denise had given me. "This is pure gold, Alex," he said, adjusting his glasses as he flipped through the pages in his office near Wall Street. "We have evidence of intellectual property theft, breach of confidentiality, maybe even conspiracy." "Conspiracy?" I asked, surprised by the term. "In the legal sense, John, Anthony, and Rachel deliberately conspired to harm you for financial gain. This goes way beyond a simple breach of contract." We discussed strategies for hours. Chris initially suggested a formal demand letter, giving Nexus a chance to settle the case discreetly. "Companies like this fear scandals more than lawsuits," he explained. "Their reputation is their most valuable asset." I agreed. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice, and perhaps some form of compensation for the damage done to my career and reputation. Chris drafted the letter that same afternoon, in impeccable legalese, detailing the violations and requesting a meeting with the Nexus board to discuss a settlement. We attached only a small sample of the evidence, enough to show we weren't bluffing, but holding the rest back as leverage. The response came faster than we expected. The next day I received a call from Marcela Torres, the Director of Human Resources at Nexus. Her tone was cordial but tense. "Alex, we'd like to schedule a meeting for tomorrow, if possible." "I'll be accompanied by my lawyer," I replied. Of course, that's understandable. Myself, our Chief Legal Officer, and... "Will Anthony Carter be present?" I interrupted. A pause. "Yes, as CFO, Mr. Carter will be in attendance." "And John?" Another longer pause. "Mr. Ribeiro is temporarily suspended from his duties while we conduct an internal investigation." That information caught me by surprise. Nexus was already taking action, even before our meeting. This could be good or bad. Maybe they were genuinely investigating, or maybe they were just building a defense. The meeting was set for the next day at 2 p.m. at the Nexus headquarters in Midtown. I spent the night reviewing all the documents, with Chris preparing for every possible scenario, from a settlement offer to a complete denial. I arrived at the Nexus building with a mix of emotions. It was strange to be back as a visitor in the place where I had worked for so many years. The receptionist, not Megan, but someone I didn't recognize, asked for our IDs and directed us to the 15th floor conference room. The space was familiar. Glass, walls, a dark oval table, a panoramic view of the city. I deliberately chose a seat with my back to the window. I didn't want distractions. I wanted to face whoever was across from me head on. Marcela entered first, followed by a man in a suit I assumed was the chief legal officer, and finally Anthony Carter. I noted Rachel's absence. Better that way. Introductions were brief, tense. Anthony seemed uncomfortable, avoiding direct eye contact. The legal officer, Eduardo Meneses, took the lead. "Mr. Miller, we've received your letter and the preliminary evidence. Nexus takes these allegations very seriously. We have already launched an internal investigation." Chris interjected smoothly. "We'd like to understand the scope of this investigation and what measures have been taken." Eduardo glanced quickly at Anthony before answering. "Mr. Ribeiro is temporarily suspended. We are auditing all documents related to Mr. Miller's termination and the subsequent hiring of Ms. Adams." "And what about Ms. Adams?" I asked directly. It was Marcela who answered. "She is on administrative leave while we ascertain the facts." The meeting proceeded with a careful dance of words. They wanted to know exactly what we had. We wanted to know what they were willing to offer. At no point did they explicitly deny the accusations, a sign that our evidence was too solid to refute. After nearly 2 hours, Eduardo finally put a proposal on the table. "We would like to resolve this situation as discreetly and fairly as possible. We are prepared to offer a substantial compensation for damages in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement." Chris and I exchanged a look. We had already discussed this possibility. "Compensation is a start," I replied, "but it's not enough. I want assurances that this won't happen to other employees. I want structural changes within the company." Anthony spoke for the first time, his voice lower than I remembered. "What kind of changes do you have in mind?" "An external audit of HR practices, a review of termination processes, and the permanent dismissal of those involved in this scheme." The room fell silent. Eduardo scribbled something on his notepad. Marcella kept her gaze fixed on the table. Anthony seemed to be mentally calculating the cost of each demand. "We can evaluate these conditions," Eduardo finally replied. "We'll need a few days to consult with the board of directors." We left the meeting with a commitment for a response in 1 week. In the elevator, Chris smiled. "They're cornered. Your evidence is stronger than they thought." "You think they'll accept the conditions?" "Probably not all of them, but we'll get a good deal." 5 days later, I received an email from Eduardo with a formal counterproposal. The compensation offered was generous, 3 times what I had expected. They agreed to the external audit and the review of HR processes. As for the dismissals, the email stated that appropriate measures have already been taken regarding the employees involved. Chris advised me to accept. "This is a win, Alex, maybe not a perfect one, but a substantial one." We signed the agreement the following week. As part of the terms, I cannot discuss the specific details of the financial settlement or the evidence presented. But I can say that 2 weeks later I heard through contacts in the industry that both John and Rachel had left Nexus. Anthony remained but was reassigned to a position with no oversight of personnel. Denise called me when the news spread. "You did it, Alex. You got justice." "We did it," I corrected her. "Without you, I wouldn't have had the proof I needed." "So what now? Are you going to look for another job in the industry?" I thought about that question for a moment. The past few weeks had been an emotional roller coaster, exposing the darkest side of the corporate world I knew. But it had also revealed my own resilience, my ability to fight for what's right. "Actually, I'm thinking of starting my own business," I replied. "A marketing consultancy focused on ethics and transparency. I already have a few interested clients." "That doesn't surprise me," she laughed. "You always were an entrepreneur, at heart." "And you? Did you get the job at the other agency?" "I did. It's smaller, like I said, but the environment is so much better. People care about each other here." In the following months, I set up my consultancy in a small office in Soho. I called it Integra Marketing, a name that reflected the exact values I wanted to embody. I hired a small but talented team. Surprisingly, some of my former clients from Nexus reached out, dissatisfied with the changes at the agency after I left. One of them was Mark Silvera, the marketing director from HealthGuard. "Your projects had soul, Alex," he said during our first coffee as business partners. "After you left, it felt like we were dealing with imitations." In a symbolic gesture, I placed my silver pen, the one with the red stone, in a pen holder on my new desk. Not as a reminder of the pain, but as a symbol of what happens when you trust blindly, and the strength it takes to rebuild when you're caught by surprise. One afternoon I received an unexpected email. It was from Rachel. "Can I call you? I need to tell you a few things." I stared at the message for a long time, the cursor blinking on the screen like a persistent question mark. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to close this chapter for good. Another part wanted to understand more, to hear any explanation or perhaps an apology. Finally, I replied, "If you want to talk, I'm willing to listen." She called the next day. Her voice sounded different, less confident, more reflective. "Alex, I know you probably hate me and you have every right. What I did was unforgivable." "Why are you calling me, Rachel?" A pause. "Because I'm trying to fix the things I can fix. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt people who didn't deserve it." I didn't answer, immediately. Her words sounded sincere, but I had been fooled before. "I don't expect your forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that what happened forced me to take a real look at myself. And I didn't like what I saw." Where are you working now? I asked, changing the subject. Nowhere for now. No one wants to hire the woman at the center of an intellectual property theft scandal. I'm freelancing, starting over from scratch. I felt a pang of empathy, despite everything. Things get better with time, Rachel, trust me. Thank you for answering. And I'm sorry, I really am. After I hung up, I contemplated the view from my window. New York City stretched out before me, immense and relentless, full of stories, like mine. People betraying, others being betrayed, some finding redemption, others seeking revenge. But in the end, the truth doesn't stay buried. Not when you know where to dig.